Chuck Norris? His time is long gone. Watch how a real fighter deals with a so-called legend of the past. Jason Statham's voice thundered through the mic, his accent sharp enough to slice the air. The words didn't just echo, they detonated. The Las Vegas arena, crammed with tens of thousands, reacted like a single living creature jolted awake. The crowd roared. Some laughed with him, enjoying the spectacle. Others jeered, voices sharp with disbelief. Camera flashes stuttered in rapid fire, turning the ring into a storm of white light. Commentators stumbled over each other, unable to believe what they'd just heard. What had been billed as an exhibition, a playful clash of styles and personalities, had shifted. Statham had made it personal. He strutted across the ring, pacing with theatrical arrogance, jaw tight, but eyes gleaming with the adrenaline of provocation. His every step was a performance, a claim that the stage was his and no one else's. He leaned into the mic again, feeding on the noise. The so-called legend sits right there, pretending he still matters. Let's see if the old man even stands up. The camera operators, seasoned veterans of fight nights, caught on immediately. One panned across the roaring crowd, another snapped to the front row. And there he was. Chuck Norris, seated a few feet from the apron, denim jacket unbuttoned over a plain shirt, jeans pressed, but unremarkable. White hair trimmed neat, beard steady, hands folded. No reaction. His stillness looked almost out of place in a hall vibrating with sound. Fans nearby noticed first. Some shouted, "Don't take that!" Others held up phones, angling to capture his face. And yet, he didn't move. His expression was neutral, his posture calm, as if he were a man waiting for a bus rather than the target of a global movie star's mockery. The tension thickened. Statham's insults hadn't just been heard. They'd been aimed. The crowd divided quickly. Younger fans laughed at the bravado, cheering Jason's swagger, while older voices booed hard, remembering a time when Chuck's name meant something entirely different. The arena became a split personality, half circus, half courtroom. Commentators leaned into the microphones, feeding the fire. Statham is poking the bear here. Will Chuck even respond? Or is the legend too old to care? Their words stretched the moment, amplifying the uncertainty until it vibrated through every seat. Statham sensed it. He raised both arms, pacing like a gladiator under floodlights, and shouted, "Come on, people, let's hear it. Do you want to see me crush a myth?" The volume spiked, cheers and boos colliding, a tidal wave of noise that rattled the steel beams of the roof. Still, Chuck sat unmoving. He didn't glance at the cameras, didn't rise to the bait. That restraint turned the atmosphere in a way Jason hadn't predicted. For every laugh, there was a hush. For every cheer, a look toward the silent man in the front row. Then a shift. Not in Chuck's posture, but in the air around him. A ripple, subtle at first, as people began to realize that silence can weigh more than 1,000 words. A teenager in the third row lowered his phone slowly, as if aware something different was happening. Even the nearest security guard straightened, sensing the moment might lurch somewhere unexpected. Jason doubled down, sensing the silence, but misreading it. "Don't just sit there, old man. Legends aren't built in chairs. Stand up and prove you've still got anything left." His voice cracked with intensity, the challenge undeniable. The arena's roar dipped, not all the way, but noticeably. Thousands of people waited for something to happen, held in the grip of uncertainty. Chuck finally stirred. Not much, just the tilt of his head, the narrowing of his eyes. But the effect rippled through the stands. The cameras zoomed in, catching the moment. For the first time, It wasn't Jason who owned the spotlight. The contrast was jarring. Jason loud, moving, punching the air with words. Chuck still, composed, letting the crowd wrestle with its own anticipation. The noise of the arena didn't just shift. It bent, warped, and hovered on the edge of silence. It was no longer a show. It was a provocation hanging unanswered. And the man it was aimed at sat steady, the weight of his quiet cutting sharper than any insult. And the question, thick and inevitable, pulsed in every mind. Would he rise? Just wondering. Where are you watching from? Write it down, bellow. He didn't stand right away. He let the noise crest and spill back on itself, like watching a wave spend its power on sand. Statham prowled the ring in widening arcs, milking the delay. He tossed a glance at the front row, leaned into the mic again, and made his voice a knife. Look at him, polite as a churchgoer. Tell you what, Vegas, his beard's got more fight left than his hands. How about we see if the legend can survive 60 seconds with someone who actually trains? Laughter rolled in hot patches, then broke against a wall of boos from the higher tiers. The building breathed in layers, beer breath, cologne, hot plastic from camera lights, the faint metallic tang of the rigging overhead. The big screens cut between Jason's grin and Chuck's stillness. The contrast played better than any script. 60 seconds, Jason barked, pacing along the ropes. A minute. That's all I need. If he lasts that long, I'll carry his chair back to the retirement home myself. A chant started, messy, uncertain, half Statham, half Chuck. It tangled in the rafters and came back as a low, unsteady thunder. The commentators filled the spaces between the surges, voices tight with manufactured curiosity that couldn't hide genuine nerves. "He's pushing this hard," one said. "We expected showmanship, but this is personal." The other added, "Does Norris bite? Or does he let the moment die on its own?" A camera crane swung in a slow arc, skimming the first rows. Chuck's hands were folded, thumbs touching. He looked like a man taking inventory of something private. Then he stood. It was small, no scrape of chair, no adjustment of jacket. He just rose, and the air changed pressure. The front rows went quiet. Noise from the cheap seats lagged a second behind, then dipped as the hush spread. Jason stopped. He placed a glove on the top rope, leaning casual, selling nonchalance, but the mic in his other hand trembled just enough for the sound crew to ride the gain. "You want your minute, Granddad?" he said, smiling too hard. "Come earn it." Chuck stepped into the aisle, past two security guards, who didn't move because he gave them nothing to push against. Up close, his age announced itself. Creases at the eyes, white in the beard, but so did a steadiness that wasn't nostalgia. He walked the short stretch to the steps, like a man who'd walked a lot of short stretches in his life, and knew what mattered at the end of them. Fans leaned across the rail, phones extended, mouths half open. A woman in a sparkly dress whispered, "Oh my God," and forgot to record. The ring lights hit his denim and turned the dust in the fabric into faint constellations. He climbed the steps without taking the hand the referee offered, ducked the top rope, and entered the ring with the quiet of a door closing. Jason played to the cameras. "Welcome back to the big room," he said, spreading his arms. "Don't trip." Chuck crossed to the timekeeper's table and gestured for a mic. He didn't snatch it. He waited. When it arrived, he didn't lift it high. He let the building lean in. "You want a minute?" he said. The words came out even, dry, fine. He nodded once, as if agreeing to help a neighbor move a couch. "But remember, sometimes a minute changes your life." The line wasn't a threat. That's why it landed. The near sections reacted first. A soft, involuntary sound, not quite a gasp. The sound moved outward like a ripple under floodlights. Jason laughed, too loud. "Hear that?" he told the crowd. "A fortune cookie!" He bounced on his toes, shaking out his shoulders, then jabbed at the air in a way that read as warm up and message both. "Clock starts when you touch me, cowboy." The referee stepped between them with the brittle authority of a man who didn't sign up for this version of the night. "This is an exhibition," he warned into his collar mic. "Controlled only." His eyes begged both men, in different ways, to make his job easy. Chuck handed the mic back and rolled his wrist once, like loosening a jar that had sat a long time in a cold cupboard. He didn't posture. He didn't even fix Jason with a stare. He looked at the canvas, at the corners, at the ropes that groaned under the tension of a million photographs. He could smell tape glue and canvas bleach and the rubber of new gloves. Jason circled, tossing crumbs to the crowd. "Blink, and you'll miss it," he called. Laughter answered. But the laugh had changed. It was thinner now, cutting across pockets of people who weren't laughing at all. On the big screens, someone cut to a tight shot of Chuck's face. No scowl, no smile, just a man measuring distance. A lower bowl of older fans stood in pockets, not cheering, not booing, recognizing. "Let's go then," Jason barked, and he slapped his own chest with the back of a glove. The sound cracked like a starter pistol. The building jolted, then steadied. Chuck lifted his hands. Not high, just enough for the work that hands do when words are done. Security at the apron shifted their weight. The timekeeper touched the edge of the bell with a fingertip. Ready, not ringing. The referee's mouth opened to give instructions that felt suddenly embarrassing in a room that had turned into a history exam. Jason took center, shoulders loose, grin fixed. He tipped his chin, daring. Tick-tock. For a wild second, the arena was perfectly balanced between spectacle and something else. Older, rarer. The crowd, that third hero, held its breath, as if the whole city were leaning forward on its elbows. Chuck's eyes met Jason's for the first time. There was nothing theatrical in the look. It was a courtesy, the kind people gave each other before things that mattered. Then he moved. Not forward, not back. Just enough. Someone near the broadcast desk said, "Oh," in a way that wasn't commentary at all. The bell hadn't rung yet. The clock hadn't started. But the minute had. The lights dimmed until only the ring glowed. Everything outside of it fell into shadow. Thousands of faces blurred into a dark ocean broken only by glowing phones. The air was heavy, smell of sweat, beer, popcorn, that faint burn of hot metal from the lights above. Even the sound of feet shuffling carried like thunder. Jason grinned, bouncing on his toes, circling. "Don't blink," he shouted into the mic. "This old man might be done before you finish a sip of beer." A ripple of laughter came from the lower seats, but higher up, the older voices booed. The sound clashed and rolled like two storms colliding. The big screen split between Jason's grin and Chuck's stillness. The contrast was striking. Jason alive with motion, Chuck like carved stone. The referee looked nervous, giving them both the same tired warning. Exhibition only. His words were too soft for the mood in the building. He glanced at the timekeeper. The bell rang once, clear, sharp, and the giant clock lit up. 60 seconds. Jason exploded forward, feet loud on the canvas. A jab flicked out, a warm-up. Then he snapped a kick toward Chuck's ribs. The strike had power, timed, practiced, sharp. But it landed on something that wasn't there. Chuck's body turned, forearms sliding into the path. The kick hit wall instead of target. Jason had to set his foot down early, and in that tiny stumble, the whole crowd gasped. It wasn't a knockdown, but it was enough. Everyone saw it. The gasps turned into a rumble. Some cheered, others laughed nervously. The commentators nearly shouted over each other. "That's not just defense, that's timing," one of them said. Jason reset, trying to mask his surprise with a smirk. He threw a quick 1-2, then a low kick. Again, Chuck wasn't there. He didn't run, didn't flinch. He shifted a half-inch, weight-balanced, forearm catching shin. A small touch, but enough to say, "I see you before you see me." The chants started then, messy at first. "Chuck! Chuck!" And some drowned it out with "Statham! Statham!" The building was split in half, noise colliding above the ring. Jason moved in close, throwing punches to the body. A hook skimmed Chuck's glove. A straight pushed against fabric but went nowhere. He bumped with his shoulder, trying to rattle him. Chuck didn't budge. He absorbed it like a tree taking wind. At 30 seconds, Jason switched stance, trying to confuse him. A left hand drove toward the body. Chuck's elbow dropped like a door closing, shutting the strike down. He answered with something small, a palm pressed against Jason's chest. Not a strike. A correction. Jason staggered a half-step sideways, face flashing irritation he didn't want anyone to see. The crowd felt it. This wasn't an act. Something real was unfolding. The noise dropped lower, sharper. The kind of sound people make when they realize they might be watching history, not just a show. Jason came again, more aggressive. He threw combinations, hands, knees, kicks, trying to overwhelm. Every strike either missed, got absorbed, or was turned aside with the same calm economy. And then came the moment. Jason launched a head kick, sharp, dangerous, the kind of strike cameras love. But Chuck had already moved. Not ducking, not blocking. Just stepping inside the arc before it mattered. The kick sliced the air. As Jason came down, Chuck's hand brushed his ribs, gently pushing him into the ropes. Jason pinwheeled, catching himself on the top rope, face red with more than exertion. The arena erupted. Phones lit the air. Commentators screamed, "He's playing with time itself. He's taking the rhythm away from him." The clock showed only a handful of seconds left. Jason, chest heaving, forced a laugh into the mic still strapped to his chest. "Cute," he said. But his smile had cracked. He threw one last straight right, just to finish strong. It missed by inches. The bell rang. 60 seconds had passed. The sound that followed wasn't simple cheering. It was confusion, awe, disbelief. Thousands of people looked at each other, wondering what exactly they had just seen. Some fans screamed Jason's name, others chanted Chuck's, and for the first time, the balance had shifted. Jason backed up, nodding quickly, trying to act unfazed. But the camera caught the twitch in his jaw. He wasn't in control anymore. Chuck didn't celebrate. He didn't even look tired. He glanced once at the clock, then back at Jason, as if to say, that was only the beginning. The crowd felt it too. Something deeper than entertainment had entered the ring. The minute was over, but the real fight had only just begun. Jason straightened too fast, like someone tripping and pretending it was part of the dance. He plastered on a grin, leaned into the mic, and barked, "That was nothing." Pure accident. He didn't even land clean. His tone rose a shade too sharp, the kind of edge that tells on a man before his face does. The arena split. Down near the floor, laughter bubbled, nervous but loud. Higher up, a rain of boos whistled from the rafters. The building became two audiences stuffed into one skin, one clapping for Jason's bravado, the other impatient, suspicious, hungry for what might come next. On the giant screen above the ring, the contrast was merciless. Jason, all teeth and movement, bouncing like a showman keeping the plates spinning. Chuck, silent, rooted, hands where they belonged. He didn't pose, he didn't blink. He just stood there, calm as concrete, letting the noise swallow itself. That quiet worked like gravity. The longer Chuck said nothing, the smaller Jason's words looked. Jason kept circling, trying to build rhythm with his steps. The referee edged closer, repeating, "Exhibition only," like a man rehearsing lines he didn't believe in. Jason snapped forward, gloves firing a pattern. Left jab, right cross, left hook. Fast, sharp, textbook aggression. Chuck dismantled it like he'd been there already. His shoulder rolled, killing the jab's sting. His glove waited for the cross, like it had been hanging in the air all day. The hook bit nothing but elbow. It wasn't flashy. It was subtraction. Strikes thrown into glue. Jason switched angles, doubled his jab, tried to change the lane. Chuck shifted one step and turned it into a dead end. Jason's glove sailed through open space, and he had to pull it back early, awkward, exposed. The camera caught his face, half a second of recalculation, and replay would magnify it forever. A chant started, stuttered, died. Nobody wanted to chant the wrong name too loudly. Jason pressed harder, trying to bully space with his shoulder, the kind of ugly contact that wins gym rounds. Chuck didn't budge. He didn't push back either. He let Jason meet something immovable and walked away with nothing. From the stands, the energy shifted. Phones rose higher. Faces leaned forward. Even those booing weren't certain anymore. Every exchange ended the same. Jason threw. Chuck erased. And every erasure planted a seed. Jason turned up speed. Flurry now. Hands high, then a calf kick to take the leg out from under him. The smack of shin on canvas echoed, sharp and hollow. Chuck's foot had left the ground half a second before. Jason winced, masking it with a bounce. He tried a front kick to the belly, crisp, theatrical. Chuck stepped back before the foot lifted, as if he'd already seen it. Jason landed frustrated, slapped his chest with a glove and shouted, "That all you got?" No reply. Not from Chuck, not from the crowd. The quiet thickened. Jason darted in again, teeth bared. A short uppercut whistled under a chin that wasn't there. Chuck had dropped his center by inches, enough to let the strike glide by. He gave back a touch, just a palm on the chest, not a push, a correction. Jason's body shifted off balance, and the audience gasped. The camera caught Jason's face as he reset. Not fear, not yet, but doubt, quick and undeniable. It flashed across his features, and the crowd saw it enlarged above the ring. The boos changed tone. Less mockery now, more inevitability. Jason attacked with his best sequence. Jab, hook high, hook low, bump with the shoulder, knee on the inside. On paper, perfect. In the ring, it unraveled. The punches brushed air. The shoulder bounced off geometry. The knee collided with space already emptied. The sound from the stands was a sharp bark, thousands reacting at once like startled dogs. Chuck answered with almost nothing, a forearm catching what needed catching, a hip denying a lane, a glove brushing aside what didn't belong. No strikes thrown, just erasures. Jason froze, chest rising hard enough for the apron mics to catch the scrape of breath. Sweat streaked his temple. The grin returned, but crooked, tight. "Come on, then," he growled. Chuck shifted his weight like a man about to take another step up a staircase. The arena tilted into silence. Phones stopped shaking. Tens of thousands leaned forward, breath caught. Even the commentators lost their words. In the tunnel, A security guard folded his arms, eyes fixed on the ring as though church had begun. Jason twitched, the tell before every move, but hesitated. That pause cut deeper than a landed strike. He shook his arms out, covering the moment with motion, then launched again, desperate to shatter the stillness. Chuck didn't push, didn't pull. He let Jason's gloves find forearms, let his shoulder meet a chest that absorbed and stayed steady. The grin finally cracked. Jason's eyes betrayed the truth. He had felt something he couldn't move. And in the rafters, across concrete and steel, the entire arena shared one thought. Something small and final was coming. The kind of thing that doesn't show up on highlight reels, but leaves a sound in the body that doesn't go away. The noise drained. The space shrank. Jason steadied his feet, trying to pretend control. Chuck took one slow step forward, and the whole building leaned into the silence, waiting for the second that would decide everything. Jason tried to laugh it off. He shook his arms loose, forcing air through his nose, and snapped at the mic. "Come on, old man. Show us something real." The laugh didn't echo back. The arena swallowed it whole. A silence rolled across tens of thousands of seats, heavy enough to change how the lights felt. You could hear things you were never meant to hear in a place this big. The creak of a rope shifting, the faint buzz of the screens, the scrape of a shoe on canvas. Even the commentators stopped filling dead air. The crowd leaned forward as if pulled by the same wire. Chuck didn't answer. He just moved. A single step, slow and certain, like a man who had nothing to prove but every right to be there. The floor seemed to change sound when his boot touched down. The ring ropes shivered, metal fittings groaning. Jason felt the pressure before he understood it. He lashed out quick, trying to break the pause. A jab, sharp, professional. Chuck's glove erased it. A right cross, then a hook. Each one disappeared into angles and bone. No clash, no noise, just the sense that the punches were being swallowed. Jason threw faster, doubling jabs, hooking high and low. Chuck let them fall away, patient, subtracting motion from motion. The grin on Jason's face faltered, then returned, thinner this time. He barked, "Lucky blocks!" and ripped a kick low at the leg. His shin smacked canvas. Chuck's foot had left the ground a blink earlier. The sound echoed up the stands like a misplayed drum. Some fans winced, others laughed nervously. Jason rushed again, front kick to the body, meant to reclaim authority. Chuck turned his torso a few degrees, let the strike skim by. The kick made noise, but no impact. Jason landed hot and overcommitted, walking straight into range. Chuck touched his bicep with an open palm and let it go, just enough to send Jason a step sideways. It wasn't force, it was direction. The building gasped as one. Jason's face betrayed it. Not fear yet, but doubt. The camera caught it, and the big screen broadcast it back to the audience. That crack in his armor multiplied the sound. The cheers for Chuck grew louder. The boos softened, and the chants tangled into one confused roar. Jason went for broke. A full combination. Jab, hook, shoulder bump, knee inside. Everything he had polished in gyms and on sets. On paper, perfect. In reality, it unraveled. The punches brushed nothing, the shoulder hit geometry, the knee cut through empty air. Chuck moved half inches at a time, each one enough to make Jason miss without knowing how. Then came the moment. Jason launched a short right to the body, sharp and mean, the kind of punch designed to hurt even if it didn't end things. Chuck dipped a fraction lower, shoulder turning. His right hand left the pocket like it had somewhere obvious to go. No wind-up, no warning. The heel of his palm met Jason's ribs 3 inches above the belt. The sound was dull, more thunk than crack. but the effect was immediate. Jason's body folded a little, breath stolen before it could form. His gloves dropped half an inch, his mouth opened around air that wasn't there. His knees softened. Pride kept him standing, but his balance slipped, one foot sliding back in instinctive retreat. The arena erupted late, as though it needed half a second to process what had happened. First came a collective gasp, sharp and unified. Then the explosion, cheers, howls, disbelief. Commentators shouted over each other. He barely touched him. No load at all. That's timing. That's control. Jason staggered back, hands pressing to his ribs. He tried to lift his gloves again, but his chest betrayed him. His breath rattled like it was scraping against something inside. He forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Cameras zoomed in, merciless. Chuck didn't advance. He didn't need to. He shifted half a step to the side, leaving space, like a teacher waiting for a student to answer. The message was clear. I don't have to finish this. You know what just happened. The referee whispered, breathe, almost like advice, not instruction. The mics picked it up anyway, and the word hung in the air. Jason tried. The first breath came jagged, shallow, like surfacing in cold water. He blinked hard, fighting the sting in his eyes. The second breath steadied him, barely. He clapped his gloves together, pretending bravado, but the sound was thin. Up in the stands, people reacted in layers. Some screamed Chuck's name, some clapped their hands raw, others sat stunned, trying to understand how so little could do so much. Replays spun on the big screen, showing the strike over and over. In slow motion, it looked almost casual. In real time, it had bent a man built on action. Jason shook out his arms, trying to pretend strength. His body betrayed him. Movements ragged, a tremor in his shoulders. He spat out words meant to sound defiant. Come on! But the crack in his voice gave him away. Chuck didn't flinch. He just raised his hand slightly, palm open, a gesture that was less threat than warning. Don't force me to teach you again. The arena froze. Tens of thousands of people went silent, the noise collapsing in on itself. All eyes fixed on Jason. His chest rose and fell, his body torn between pride and survival. The clock ticked above them, irrelevant now. This was no longer about seconds. It was about choice. Jason's jaw tightened. He shifted his stance, trying to will strength back into his legs. And Chuck waited, calm, ready, like a door that wouldn't move unless pushed. The crowd held its breath, balanced on the edge, waiting to see if Jason would step through or if he would finally break. Jason's chest rose shallow, each breath thin and expensive. Pride shoved him forward, but his ribs begged him to stop. He shook his gloves loose, trying to look ready, though every movement betrayed tension. The crowd could sense the argument inside him. Their roar didn't come back this time. It thinned into a pressure that made the silence louder. He stepped closer, forcing his body to obey. Again, he shouted, too loud, voice cracking on the last note. He twitched to faint, hoping to trick Chuck into overreacting. Chuck didn't react at all. He stood calm, open palms, face unreadable. The patience of a man who had already chosen the ending. Cameras zoomed in on his stillness, magnifying the contrast. Jason all twitch and noise, Chuck rooted in quiet. Jason darted forward, a short right hand, not reckless, but desperate. Chuck's glove absorbed it with a soft smack, as if the punch had landed on a cushion. Chuck shifted one step, erasing Jason's angle, and said quietly, "Don't make me." The words weren't aimed at the mic, but they carried anyway. The whole arena heard them. Jason grimaced and snapped a hook upstairs, trying to reclaim the image of control. Chuck tilted his forearm, the punch sliding off bone. No counter, just denial. The look in his eyes wasn't anger. It was fatigue, as if he was tired of being asked to prove something already settled. Then came the end. Jason stepped to reset, but Chuck stepped with him, placing a palm lightly on his shoulder. No shove, no strike, just contact. Jason's balance tilted, his knees wobbled, and for a half-second he stood in the no-man's land between control and collapse. Chuck steadied him with the same hand, holding him upright instead of letting him fall. The crowd gasped, then roared. It wasn't a knockout, but it was undeniable. Replay would show almost nothing. A step, a touch, a man nearly falling. But live, everyone felt the truth. Jason's face changed. The fight in him looked for ground and found none. He tried to force a grin, but his chest betrayed him. Breath caught, ribs aching. The microphone strapped to his chest picked up the hitch, and tens of thousands heard it. Chuck closed the distance one last inch. They stood close enough for Jason to see the lines in his face, the gray in his beard, the calm in his eyes. Chuck's voice carried low, meant for him but echoing everywhere. It's done. You know it. They know it. Make the good choice. For a beat, Jason hesitated. Pride pushed one way, survival the other. He looked at the big screens replaying the body shot, then at Chuck's calm stare. His hands lifted halfway and sank again. The body had cast its vote. The arena reacted first with silence, then with a rolling tide of sound, relief, respect, something close to gratitude. The referee stepped in, hand between them, and Jason nodded once. Not theater, not bravado. Just acceptance. He leaned on the ropes, chest heaving, eyes lowered. The crowd no longer split between sides. They were united in recognition of what they had seen. Chuck didn't raise his arms. He didn't claim victory. He said one word, almost too quiet. But the mics caught it anyway. Respect. The applause that followed was different. Not the wild noise of a knockout, but a steady, standing ovation. People rose from their seats, clapping like they understood the lesson rather than celebrating a win. Jason met Chuck in the center, gloves hanging low. For a moment, it looked like he might fire off a last insult, but instead he said, plain and tired, I was wrong. I respect it. Chuck dipped his head, no smile, no gloat. Just acknowledgement. Good, he answered. Take care of yourself. Jason stepped back, leaning heavy on the ropes. Chuck turned toward the exit, unhurried. He ducked under the rope and walked down the steps without fanfare. Security made space, but the crowd parted naturally. Phones lowered. Applause rose and rolled. At the tunnel, Chuck paused. He glanced once at the arena, at the people on their feet, at the sound that was more than noise. He gave a small nod, almost a bow, then disappeared into the shadows. Back in the ring, Jason stayed kneeling longer than he meant to, hand pressed to his ribs. He finally stood, not smaller, but more human. The cameras caught his face, not defiant, but humbled. And in living rooms, in bars, across the city, people repeated the same line one of the commentators finally spoke. That wasn't a fight, that was a lesson, and everyone who watched nodded, because they knew it was true.